Vita is the first character in Honkai Impact history who not only learned that eons exist, but officially stepped onto the path of elation. She's basically Sparkle's bestie. It was Sparkle who gave Vita her mask and brought her into the Masked Fools. What's more, she even knows Sampo Koski personally. So Vita appearing in Star Rail is just a matter of time. And this isn't just a theory. The devs confirmed it. Vita was designed from the start to be like Welt, a narrative bridge connecting the two games. In this video, we'll break down her full backstory. We'll see what connects her to Sparkle, and how she went from being a spineless puppet of an ancient god to joining the most chaotic faction in the universe.
To understand Vita's nature, let's dive into the history of Venus. 250 million years before Earth's humanity, Venusians also faced the Honkai, a force bent on destroying their civilization. Leading the planet's defense was a genius director, Dr. Vita, a woman of iron will, ready to do anything for victory. But the longer they fought, the stronger the enemy became. When conventional weapons failed, humanity turned to forbidden tech. Venus began drawing energy from the Sea of Quanta, a special dimension within the Honkai-verse. In desperation, Dr. Vita crossed a line. She unlocked the Soul System, which stored consciousness copies of every citizen. The result was catastrophic. Instead of salvation, she triggered a quantum tsunami. An energy surge flooded Venus in minutes, wiping out all life on the surface. Dr. Vita remained the sole survivor. The sea's energy changed her, granting immortality and godlike powers. Left alone among the ruins, she laughed and wept, realizing the terrible price of her so-called luck. Obsessed with the idea of reviving civilization, she made a radical choice. Casting aside her humanity and her name, she ascended, becoming an entity known as Sa. Sa took root in the Sea of Quanta, beginning an endless harvest, consuming the energy of other worlds. But behind the Honkai stood a higher power, the Cocoon of Finality. In the future, it would arrive on Earth too. Sa was terrified of a direct fight. Knowing she was too weak, she hid at the edge of the solar system, where the cocoon's influence couldn't reach. Becoming a parasite of worlds, Sa sought to amass enough energy to one day replace the cocoon. For this harvest, she needed hands. She created proxy clones. Their job was to infiltrate worlds and prep them for absorption. Here lies the key difference. Sa is a mad ancient god living in the past, but our Vita is a unique anomaly. Among countless faceless servants, she's the only one born with Sa's own face. A glitch, the true cause of which we'll reveal later. Her creator hated her, yet allowed her to exist. Our heroine started as just a serial number, a biological drone, 150 million years old, devoid of memory, will, or name. Her existence followed an algorithm: infiltrate, gain trust, harvest, then hibernate with a memory wipe. A world died, energy went to Sa, and Vita restarted the cycle. Between missions, proxies were kept in artificial sleep. To make the tools work better, Sa uploaded some of her own memories, but the system glitched. The memories of destroyed worlds didn't vanish. Digital ghosts settled in Vita's subconscious, forming a personality. It was an explosion of self-awareness. For the first time, she said, "I," the foundation of any self. Sa foresaw this. Proxies with sparking personalities were trapped in endless dreams. In the chaos of dreams, she saw the people she'd killed. and instead of obedience, a desire to save them was born. Key to her awakening was Mara, a digital copy of Saw's former colleague. Saw enslaved her, trapping her inside a mechanical monster. Mara hated Saw and despised Vita for wearing her tormentor's face. But in her, she saw a chance and became the catalyst for rebellion. In her dream, the Vita played the Fixer, an obedient agent. But Mara interfered, making her question reality and remember her true self. She realized she wasn't a tool, but a shepherd. In that moment, Vita learned the most important lesson. Freedom isn't given at birth. You have to fight for it. And the symbol of that freedom became the endless starry sky. Saw knew everything, but she didn't care. Having become a deity, she lost all human logic. She only cared about consuming energy. One doll's rebellion seemed insignificant. Thus began the story of the Awakened. Taking the name Vita, an echo of Saw's own human past, she became a mirror of her creator. But after the joy of birth came horror. Vita realized she was a slave, forced to kill those she'd barely bonded with. Now self-aware, she saw the faces of the doomed over and over, along with the endless, monotonous repetition of death. But that monotony gave her a weapon: patience. Vita decided to play the perfect doll. She became the greatest actress, just to one day kill her god. Thus her creed was born: absolute freedom, and hatred for arrogant gods who play with human lives. Vita's plan to gain freedom began to unfold in the bubble world of Salt Snow. It was a virtuoso performance, acting the loyal servant while plotting rebellion. In Salt Snow, she met heroes from Earth, living, unpredictable people. She quickly befriended them and genuinely loved that time. To them, she was an ally. To Saw, a tool. But Vita realized these people were her shot at freedom. For freedom's sake, Vita had to commit betrayal. She leaked intel about the Earthlings to Saw and threatened to wipe out the world. Vita knew Saw wouldn't step in personally, but would use her instead. Sayla, having awakened as a Hersher, engaged Vita in combat. Saw, not wanting to deal with this petty squabble, gave Vita a massive chunk of her power, which is exactly what Vita was waiting for. The fight with Sayla demanded more strength, and Saw kept pouring energy in. At the critical moment, Vita used that power not to attack, but to strike within herself. She shattered the mental chain binding her to the Creator. This was the end of her slavery. Vita silenced Saw's voice in her head. For the first time, she was autonomous, keeping the power she was given. But that was just step one. Saw was still alive, and Vita knew, to be truly free, the god had to die. The story shifts to the edge of the solar system, to Saw's experimental planet, Phosphorus. Here, she wanted to resurrect Venus. Let's rewind a bit. Together with Saw, they built a new sieve here, using the gene pool from the Ark. Saw wiped the Venusian consciousness copies, realizing she couldn't build a perfect world with broken souls. Saw's feelings toward Vita were complicated. She hated her specifically for her humanity, emotions she herself had discarded as weakness. Vita's face reminded her of her own screams of despair. Gradually, becoming a god, Saw lost herself. Seeking optimization, she deliberately cut off her useless emotions and virtues: compassion, honesty, innocence. From these shards, she made 7 kids, the Little Vitas, appointing them city guardians. Elder Vita became their nanny. She took care of them, brought them gifts. For the first time, she formed real human bonds. To the Vitas, she was their beloved big sister. Once, Vita nearly broke down from the overwhelming feelings. The little Vitas confessed their only wish was for her to stay with them a little longer. She'd only felt a shock like that once before, the moment she woke up. But the little Vitas became a curse. Sa created an artifact with the power of samsara. When the kids activated it, thinking they were following protocol to solve a crisis, they actually triggered a flood. The water killed everyone, including them. Elder Vita was left with an insane task, dragging them out of the water, wiping their memories, and restarting the loop. Vita grew attached to those Sa simply recycled in her attempts to build a perfect civilization. Returning to Phosphorus as a free agent, Vita saw a chance to end Sa for good. Events brought Earth's heroes to the planet, Fu Hua and Grisio. Vita decided to weaponize them. She fed them intel while staying in the shadows. It all led to one thing: the mad god had to die. The little Vitas learned the truth about themselves and the city, but their love for their sister remained. Being Sa's virtues, they could be used against her. The kids decided to sacrifice their lives. Vita tried to stop them, claiming she didn't care, but they chose death to save their home and their sister. Vita herself couldn't fight. Using her powers on Phosphorus would have instantly destroyed her by the Creator's will. Earth's heroes fought a fragment of Sa, but she used divine punishment, killing Fu Hua. Yet at the decisive moment, Vita turned against the Creator. Using the artifact's samsara power, she locally reversed time, undid Hua's death, and helped smash Sa's clock, proving divinity isn't omnipotent. Thanks to the Earthlings' plan and Vita's interference, this part of Sa was destroyed. This weakened her significantly and marked the beginning of the end. Sa was broken. Endless existence, basically as a machine, had drained her. Deep down, she wanted it to end. When Vita infiltrated her after the defeat, it was more like euthanasia than murder. Vita promised not to repeat her fate. She gave her creator a peculiar funeral. Killing the Creator, Vita took the most precious thing from the dying Sa, the eyes of Bodhi, the core of her power. Though weakened in Vita's hands, it granted her Sa's abilities and made her the new creator of Phosphorus. But power came with a price. A rule kicked in. Creations of Phosphorus cannot remember the Creator. Gaining Sa's power, Vita was automatically erased from everyone's memory. But the worst part, she was forgotten by the little Vitas, her sisters and brothers. Although the little Vitas had died, Vita restored their bodies and brought them back, saving their souls. But when they woke up, for them, Big Sister had never existed. Vita gained absolute freedom, but remained in absolute solitude. This moment finally cemented her title, the Lone Planetfarer. Having absorbed the eyes of Bodhi, Vita became a planetary-scale entity. Even if Sa's core was weakened, Vita's arsenal is still terrifying. Her main power is mind manipulation. Vita reads thoughts, enters dreams, and edits them. She sees people's true motives and hacks both psyches and digital systems. In combat, Vita keeps her distance. Why get her hands dirty when she has the Star Traveler? Sa's giant mecha now obeys her. Vita upgraded it, boosting its firepower and size tenfold. With a snap of her fingers, this titan rains down laser beams and massive strikes. Vita can also pilot the mecha herself, amplifying it. Vita never does anything just because. Even her attacks, it's all a show. It's not enough to win. She has to do it with style. Because if you're free, you must have your own style. Something she lacked as a faceless proxy. Another fundamental ability is controlling the Sprout of Wishing. This is the mechanism Saw used to harvest worlds. It works like a parasite, feeding on desires and strong emotions. Now, using this principle, Vita can store energy in the artifact she kept from Phosphorus. By provoking huge crowds into strong emotions, Vita literally feeds the artifact with their reactions to gain power. The irony is that Vita herself is also a Sprout of Wishing. But while normal sprouts were for destruction, Vita became an anomaly. That's her true origin. Not a system error, but the result of merging Saw's divine authority with her unconscious desire to keep the part of herself lost, fighting the Honkai. Vita is the embodiment of Saw's humanity, surviving against its creator's will. She's living proof that even after becoming a god, you can't completely kill the human inside. Besides that, Vita inherited some of Saw's other divine powers, creating matter from energy, accelerating her own time, and controlling the time of created objects. The core opens up huge possibilities, and we've yet to see Vita's full potential. But most importantly, she now has a Masked Fool's mask, gifted by Sparkle. We don't know all its properties, but it lets her bypass imaginary energy barriers and leave the Honkai Impact homeworld. Gaining independence, Vita didn't choose the hero's path. She stayed in the gray zone. In the Mars story arc, she became the quantum computer operator. There, she found the perfect partner, Entropy. She saw a reflection of herself. Entropy was also a tool made by the Martian goddess for endless sims. Vita calls herself a gravedigger. Her goal isn't just to help a sister in misery, but to dig a grave for an arrogant god. So Vita wrecked her plans. When the Martian goddess forced the Dreamseeker to live the same scenario, Vita stepped in to break the cycle. Hacking the system, she forced the goddess out of the shadows, revealed the truth to Entropy, and helped her become self-aware. In the finale, Vita even risked herself, confronting the goddess so Entropy could absorb some of her power. Regarding her personality, Vita often acts provocative, turning people into cubes, trolling heroes. But a key detail: Vita's trolling here isn't just for laughs or mockery. It's provocative behavior that exposes emotions and essentially breaks people's boundaries. However, it's not just that she's bored. It's her past. She spent millions of years enslaved by Saw, a god obsessed with order. For her, any script, duty, or strict rule is a trigger reminding her of prison. Behind her defiance isn't just boredom, but a massive experience gap. Having spent 150 million years as a god's tool, Vita effectively doesn't know how to interact normally, since everyone around her was just fuel for the harvest. Vita lacks the skill for human intimacy. So her trolling isn't a whim, but the only language she has. She tries to connect the way a being of her scale sees it, through trials, games, and provocation, unconsciously hoping someone sees her clumsy attempt not to be alone. Her trolling is also a reality check. Proof that the world isn't another harvest, but real life. Only an unpredictable, living reaction convinces her she's talking to people, not puppets. Moreover, for Vita, these games are the only safe form of love. Here, she sets the rules. She's no longer the victim, but the game master. By forcing interactions on her terms, she ensures she'll never be a helpless toy again. And that's why, meeting someone stronger or getting an unexpected reaction, Vita sometimes just freezes, unable to joke it off. The irony of her loneliness is best seen in one detail. Inside her formidable battle mecha lies a hidden digital dorm room with chibi versions of the heroes. A powerful entity capable of erasing cities essentially plays with dolls, watching their virtual lives. This is the Vita no one sees, a victim and rejected clone seeking connection she will never admit to. And some heroes from Earth, like May and Kiana, see in her a lonely soul who simply doesn't know how to ask for warmth directly. Perhaps it is this silent understanding on their part that gives her hope. But hope for Vita is too fragile a feeling to put on display. She is much more used to hiding behind paradoxes. Vita realized that the role of the villain is the most effective tool. While heroes waste time on moral dilemmas, she acts. Once, she intentionally turned characters against herself to unite them against a common enemy. She likes destroying expectations. Everyone expects nastiness from her, but she prepares a surprise. Vita saves the world pretending she wants to break it. It's faster and more fun that way. Her attitude toward intimacy is also interesting. She intentionally attacks enemies from a distance, avoiding direct contact. But this avoidance applies only to strangers. With those she has accepted and who have accepted her, like Kiana or Sparkle, the barrier falls. Her standoffishness is not a phobia, but selectivity. She only lets in those who passed the sincerity test. In the community, Vita is often reduced to a troll and villain. And this is not surprising. She is brutally honest about her sins, but secretive about her virtues. She openly speaks of her misdeeds, but masks her good deeds. Vita asks for no forgiveness. She accepts her darkness. This is a complex alloy of personality, the creator's shadow, and the fear of becoming a puppet again. These very contradictions make her truly alive. Herein lies her main paradox. For an ordinary person, stability is a blessing. For her, a trigger. Order equals slavery. So she seeks chaos. She needs movement and unpredictability to drown out the echo of loneliness. But this is simultaneously her curse. On one hand, she desperately seeks acceptance, the very family she found in the little Vitas. She wants to be understood, not to feel superfluous. After all, the worst loneliness is being lonely among people. Vita herself says, "Do you know what a grain of sand loves most? Winter. Because all strange, ill-fitting creatures will be accepted by the snow that covers everything." She feels like this grain of sand, small, hard, and alien. In the company of heroes, she is an outsider, a former enemy. She doesn't fit. Snow for her is the chaos of a common cause or celebration. It hides differences. When everyone is busy saving the world, no one sees the killer in her. At that moment,
She is one of everyone. She is accepted. Vita seeks not just attention, she seeks shelter. Creating games and pranks, she builds a safe space where she can be near people without feeling like a monster. On the other hand, to preserve her personality, she must be a masked fool. She wears the mask not for fun, but to protect her fragile freedom from herself.
Why did Vita, who hates deities, accept the masked fool's mask?
The answer is simple. She is tired of predictability. Sa was absolute order. Joy and sparkle are absolute unpredictability. For Vita, who is allergic to scripts, the philosophy of the masked fools became a breath of fresh air. She doesn't need chaos for the sake of destruction. She needs freedom from the script. And the path of elation is the very place where scripts, in the usual sense, simply do not exist. Accepting the mask, she didn't join a circus. She burned her prison robe. And Vita also needed someone who would understand her cynicism and love for the absurd without moralizing. That is exactly why, meeting Sparkle, she didn't try to stop her. Vita saw in her a reflection of that side of herself she no longer needed to hide. But how did this meeting happen at all? Sparkle arrived in the Honkai Impact world not by chance. She was attracted by fireworks, echoes of ancient Mars destruction. To shake up the frozen reality, she staged a grand prank. She created a dream world copying star rail locations and tried to infect the Martian quantum computer with a virus. The most interesting thing is that even before arriving in the new world, Sparkle already knew about Vita. She went for a virtuoso deception. She wiped her own memory so Vita couldn't read her intentions. Mind reading is useless if you don't remember yourself that you are the instigator of the game. In this duel of two manipulators, the girls quickly found a common language. They teamed up, beating up poor Sampo Koski, whom Sparkle skillfully lured to Mars as a scapegoat. Even losing to Vita in the final round of her prank, Sparkle remained delighted. She saw in Vita not just a local, but an ideal actor trapped in a bad play. Saying goodbye to Vita, Sparkle promised to return with a gift, and kept her word. Soon she brought Vita a masked fool's mask. Vita accepted it, officially stepping onto the path of elation. The Aeon Aha creates masks personally for each masked fool, and Vita was no exception. Now the power of elation is available to her. For Vita, receiving the mask is not joining a circus. It is the final act of liberation. A declaration that she will no longer follow other people's scripts. From now on, she writes the rules herself, even if they make no sense. Friendship with Sparkle does not contradict Vita's desire to be accepted. On the contrary, this is acceptance, but not as a good girl, but as an equal, dangerous and unpredictable. Sparkle offers what Vita craved for millions of years, the freedom to be herself. Despite all her power, Vita remained a prisoner of the solar system until recently, due to the barrier of imaginary energy. But the masked fool's mask became the key. The mask's power allows ignoring the boundaries of worlds. Now Vita is a lone planetfarer among stars. The confrontation of two tricksters became the basis for the animation for the two Honkai's collaboration. They traded barbs, competed in deception, and fought using mechas.
This animation is part of the canon. The phrase from its ending about the future journey repeats Sparkle's weapon description word for word. This means that Sparkle's battle with Vita is not just a promo, but reality. The video's events likely happen in the future, after the current story. In the finale, Vita says their journey will be pleasant. Perhaps this battle will happen after they leave the Honkai Impact world. Vita walked the path from a spineless shadow on a dead planet to a god's puppet, from traitor to deity, and finally, to a member of the most unpredictable faction in the universe. Now she has everything for interstellar travel. The mental power of the eyes of Bodhi, an autonomous battle mecha, and a masked fool's mask opening any doors. Her status is confirmed officially. In an interview, developers stated, Vita was conceived as a proxy and a bridge, a unique character capable of moving freely between the worlds of Honkai Impact and Star Rail, and connecting the plots of both games, like Welt. However, Vita differs from Welt. While he ended up on the Astral Express involuntarily, Vita must leave the system consciously. She is driven not by duty, but by personal interest and a thirst for a new show. Sparkle's invitation was accepted. And the question isn't whether Vita will appear, but whether the developers have changed their initial plans. After all, Vita is a paradox. She strove for freedom to be alone, but now uses this freedom to seek connections, with Sparkle, with anyone who will dispel her boredom. She runs not from the past, but from the emptiness inside herself. What role will she play in Star Rail? Will she become a powerful ally? Or, in the spirit of the new faction, turn the adventure into chaos, simply because she finds it fun? Vita's appearance in Star Rail could happen very soon. In the version 3.8 story, there was a direct reference to her. Sparkle's doll directly mentions the Star Traveler, Vita's personal battle mecha, and this happens on the eve of opening a new world of Elation. A coincidence? In Hoyoverse games, there are no simple coincidences. Skeptics will say this is just an Easter egg. Indeed, in Star Rail, there are many references to Honkai Impact. Himiko quotes the Honkai Creed. Acheron repeats Raiden Mei's words. But these are emotional references. In the version 3.8 story, it's different. Sparkle named a concrete object, Star Traveler. This is not a philosophical concept, it is a unique battle mecha. For an ordinary player, it's just a name, but for Honkai Impact fans, it's a beacon signal. Considering the time difference between the games, Vita may well have been traveling with the Masked Fools for many years already. The Planet of Elation is the ideal stage for her debut, possibly not immediately as a playable character, but as an active plot participant. After all, for Vita, the entire universe is a stage. And the show must go on. Write in the comments if you are waiting for Vita in Star Rail, and if you think she will appear. Be sure to watch the previous video via the prompt on the screen. Thanks for watching.